Hello, welcome. We are going live on Instagram as well. I hope many of you are able to join today. I'm just here by myself, and so I would love to have you be present in the comments today. I don't see anybody here today. I've got my tech support person, Jessica, with me. Maybe Jessica will let me know if you're seeing me and hearing me. Okay, welcome, Stephanie. Good to see you here. And Shelley, I see you. All right. Welcome. Janice, hello. Glad you're having a warm, sunny day. It's sort of warm here too. 46, I guess, is warm in Michigan. I'm in West Michigan. Let me know where you're from. It's good to have you. So we've got an important topic here today. His needs, my needs, our needs. How do you balance self-care and partnership? So I want to make sure this is a useful hour for you all as you're joining me. I would love to hear your thoughts and your needs today. What's brought you to this live today? What are you hoping to get? Go ahead and interact in the chat if you have something specific that you need. And also, if you have a private question for me, I will love to take some questions later on. You can send those to leslievernick.com/question/ if you don't feel comfortable putting those in the chat, because this is a public page. And so we do want to protect your information, but we aren't able to do that on a public page. We can do that if you send your questions to leslievernick.com/question/, and we can address your needs there. Hey, Elizabeth and Julie, I see you here. Welcome. So I was thinking about the direction to take with this, and we can definitely veer off if you have a particular need today. But I was thinking about relationship development, sort of the way childhood development goes. So how a parent and a child connect and create safety, and that relationship kind of gets replayed in a romantic relationship. So the core aspect of well-being and a relationship is this ability to function as a separate self while being connected at the same time. And that happens in childhood as well, early childhood, infancy, it begins. And oftentimes we lose our sense of self because we become overly focused on the desires and approval of others that we're in a relationship with. And that leads us to be sort of enmeshed, right? Sort of overly joined to their needs, and we lose ours. Or the opposite of that would be extreme self-sufficiency, and we become so detached from that person, and it deprives us of that enriching benefit and close bond that we long for in relationship. I think for many of you in this community, it's more of that enmeshment that happens in the beginning. And then the detachment is more out of a sense of, I have to do this to survive because I'm not in relationship to somebody who can have a healthy relationship with me. So that might be true for you today. But the goal, because of our topic, is balancing self-care and partnership. The goal is to be differentiated, right? To have that separateness and also be able to come together to have a meaningful relationship. So you want to be able to connect and yet still be autonomous and your emotional functioning. So having your own beliefs, your own values, and that ability to stay stable within yourself is so important. Even when you're facing extreme anxiety or pressures, um, and those internal needs that pop up. So I said early that this develops just like a parent-child relationship. So initial phases of a romantic relationship usually start where there's two different people who are separate. They have likes, they have dislikes, they have dreams, they have fantasies. But when they fall in love, they are kind of have this process of merging because of those extreme feelings that come up. And there's this blurring of boundaries that happens. And the boundary sort of goes around the couple rather than around individuals. So there's this temporary sense of loss of self and loss of control that actually feels really good in a relationship oftentimes. But over time, people realize they're not as much alike as they thought. And maybe their dreams and their fantasies they thought were similar are really not. And they begin to realize these differences and they start to experience anxieties. And they may wonder if these anxieties are going to drive them apart or if maybe they were never meant to be together. And this sometimes happens even after marriage, where this begins. Oftentimes, I would say it happens after marriage. And maybe that's where you are, this extreme anxiety of, are we even meant to be together? Did I make a mistake? And so this next phase, which is similar to that of child-parent, is the separation individuation stage, is where we are separate and yet we come together to be interdependent. So there's an differentiation begins to start again of what do I like? What does he like? How can we be different and also be in this relationship? So that ability to express your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own wishes and desires, and to listen to the other person's thoughts and feelings, wishes and desires without attacking, blaming, or try to overpower them. So this may be happening in your relationship. If you're here today listening, where somebody is trying to overpower the other one. And oftentimes it comes from a sense of anxiety, but sometimes also this need for control or maybe even entitlement for control. And you may be noticing that in your spouse or partner. But when this is a healthy dynamic, when you're becoming differentiated and it's happening smoothly, each partner is able to manage their own discomfort and grapple with the differences at the same time. So they notice the discomfort and the differences, but they're able to manage it really well. And as they mature, the we becomes smaller. There's less enmeshment, and they get more defined as people. And what brings them their self-esteem. And the self-esteem is not dependent on the relationship itself. That's something that the individuals kind of build within themselves. Confidence in who they are, what they want out of life, and that ability to regulate their emotions and take care of themselves. And when this gets stronger, they come together to reform that we. They put that deeper value on the we, which takes work, right? Schedule time together, finding interests that are similar, things that they can go do together. So there's a strong we, but the I is not overshadowed. And developing that we is important. And it creates this sort of incredible state that's called synergy. When we talk about development, child development, I call it synergy, or this mutual interdependence that's sort of incredible because the two people are together. 1 + 1 actually equals greater than 2 because of the synergy that happens between those people when the we comes together. And so many of you don't have that, right? That strong sense of two healthy individuals who come together to create a really strong and powerful we. But that's what we're talking about today. Oftentimes what happens when it's not healthy is that you get into these binds together where you sort of regress to early childhood, something that was missing between the parent and the child interaction, and you recreate that in the dynamic of the romantic relationship, and you put each other in these symbiotic binds that are really tough to get out. And so it's hard to strike that balance between being in a partnership and practicing self-care. And it really takes ongoing self-discovery and incredible communication. And that way you can develop that differentiation and participate in healthy, fulfilling relationships without losing that sense of self. And so you want to get to that place where honoring your own needs doesn't detract from your capacity to love and support others. It actually enhances it. So how do you do that? What's been working for you all in terms of keeping independence and also fostering connection in relationship? What have you been doing? Go ahead and let me know in the chat. I would love to see your ideas. What are your tips for building partnership and also self-care at the same time? So I've mentioned communication is a big part of it in the relationship. So knowing how to communicate well, knowing what you need is of utmost importance. So that's kind of goes back to our title, his needs, my needs, and our needs together. Are you able to really define it? Do you know what your needs are? Are you able to distinguish needs from wants? Do you know the difference? And do you know how to communicate it in a way that doesn't put the other person on the defensive or feeling blamed or criticized? So we're going to continue to talk about this. I would love to see in the chat what you come up with as your tips, something that works for you. But also I want to invite you to our coaching group where we are going to be working on how to become strong within yourself. So this is called Walking in Core Strength, and it's formulated on 4 core principles to help you become a stronger self. Part of that is recognizing your needs, recognizing your patterns of communication, working on communication, and how can you do that in a way that's open to others, but also respectful to them and empathetic. And being rooted in truth about what kind of relationship you're in as well. I'm excited about this group coaching. We're starting actually in 1 week. So our first group start next Monday. We have groups open 5 days of the week next week, and we would love for you to join. This is a 3-month program that we're offering where we come together and meet every other week for 90 minutes. So same time and same day of the week. So you get to pick your class time that you are interested in. We have many groups that are close to filling up. So if you have a tough schedule and you need a particular day or time, you'll want to check that out pretty quickly at leslievernick.com/group coaching to check out what days and times. This is different group coaching than Empowered to Change. So Beverly, I see your question in the chat. This is just centered on core strength. So that CORE, courageously committed to truth, open to the Holy Spirit and wise others. The R is responsible for yourself and respectful towards others without dishonoring yourself. And the E is for empathetic without enabling. So we really dive deep into those 4 core principles. And Empowered to Change, we touch on those for sure, but we don't take that deep dive into them. So this is where Empowered to Change is a 6-month coaching group that covers a lot more different topics than core strength. This one is a 3-month coaching group. But it's a similar format in that there are 5 participants and 1 coach who come together for 90 minutes every other week. It is curriculum based, meaning you'll have access to a training portal with videos and handouts. You'll have homework to do, and then we come together to experience that together. When we meet. So that's what really makes it powerful, is you get the opportunity to practice these things. So taking each of those core principles, breaking it down, diving deep, and then coming together with a group of women to really practice those. This group coaching is only for women. It is rooted in Christian principles. There's a lot of scripture weaved within that. Certainly if you are not a Christian, but you are not bothered by that, you are welcome to join. All right, Beverly, you are in E2C right now. Empowered to Change is a wonderful group coaching, but that's already running and it's full. And so I would advise you to really just dive deep into that at this time and maybe look at another time in doing Walking in Core Strength. But I would love it if you have questions about the group coaching. I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Or if you have questions about this topic of his needs, my needs, and our needs, how to balance partnership and self-care, I would love to address those today. And so I'm seeing trusting in God. I'm reading in the chat. Compassionately listening to his needs. Don't want to make any assumptions about what he wants or needs. And making sure that he knows what you want or needs. Yeah, and what you want or need. That's incredible. And it's great if you can communicate that. And it's great if your partner is good at receiving that. That's not always the case. And I recognize that in this community, there are a lot of women who are drawn to Leslie Vernick because they are in destructive marriages. And so when you're in a destructive relationship or a destructive marriage, that becomes a lot more difficult because communicating doesn't always go well. But what we're encouraging, we're helping you gain that core strength to show up in your best possible way to give the relationship the best chance to flourish. And for the other person to experience what healthy's like. You can model what healthy looks like, feels like, sounds like, in hopes that they will be drawn into that. Certainly, it's not your responsibility to do their work, but in doing your own work, you change that those patterns and those dance steps, which causes them the ability to do the same and join you in that. So let's talk about that. The tips for partnership and self-care. It's really important to cultivate self-reflection, to know what your values are, know what your beliefs are, and what brings you joy. To know what matters to you helps you to know your limits and establish those very personal boundaries. And if you don't know what those are, you're not going to be able to communicate those well or openly. So the ability to have those honest conversations means that you've done your own internal work. And that's what we're talking about in Walking in Core Strength group coaching, is it's doing that internal work to discover what are your limits, what brings you joy, what are your beliefs and your values, so that you can communicate those in a way that's respectful and also empathetic. But we're careful with that empathy that it doesn't move into a place of being over-functioning for somebody else, that we don't enable them to continue in bad behavior or enable them to continue to hurt us or harm us in certain ways. And then once you identify what your personal boundaries are and those limits are, then setting those boundaries can be tricky. I've worked with many women, many couples, and setting boundaries is tough. And so this group experience in Core Strength is to be able to practice that, to define it, and to get some help and support when you're struggling to identify them or to how to talk about them. So remembering the trickiest thing I find with boundaries is that you're not putting boundaries around another person and their behavior. The boundaries are around yourself for your own safety and protection. So it's meant to foster intimacy and freedom within the relationship. And so often people use those almost as weapons or as means of control for somebody else. And that doesn't go well in a relationship. Also, what's important to work on is developing emotional regulation. This is something that I feel passionately about, and we do in this community as well, is learning those skills. How do you manage your emotions effectively? How do you self-soothe without relying exclusively on other people to do that for you? So how do you do that? How do you self-soothe? What helps for you? What are your tools for managing emotions effectively? A big one that comes up is anxiety. So that's something I mentioned earlier in relationship. When you experience those differences, it can be unsettling. Also, a big one I find is grief, when there's a loss of expectation in the relationship of what you thought it would be or what you thought the other person, who they were or what they're capable of. And then often shame comes up as well. Those are some really big, intense emotions that take regulation techniques. So what are you all using to self-soothe when those emotions get really big and overwhelming and you're compelled to move towards a relationship, either by controlling the relationship, chasing after the relationship, over-functioning in the relationship, excessively pleasing in the relationship in order to settle your own emotions? What works for you? Heart After God, I'm reading your comment. My husband seems to believe I should be grateful to be his doormat. I am not, and will show him the truth. I am no longer enabling poor behavior, but my struggle is still having intense anger. Hey, I get that. If you're in a relationship with somebody who is entitled, they have certain expectations for you, they want to just sort of use you for their gain. I think the normal response to that would be anger. That's a difficult relationship to be in. And I am so glad to hear that you are no longer enabling poor behavior. But how do you regulate your anger? What kind of things can you do for yourself that are going to be safe? So when we talk about emotions, it's important to be careful not to allow those emotions to become who you are, so that you don't embody anger, that anger is just a feeling informing you. So anger may tell you, hey, this is not a good relationship. Things are not going well. So anger has a message for you. And anger is an emotion that is motivating. It's energizing. It kind of prompts you to do something about it. So the doing is oftentimes setting your limits and your boundaries so that you don't get overly used. That doesn't change his expectations, obviously. And it may not cause him to treat you different, but it will cause you to accept different behavior from him, or not accept the behavior that he's been giving you. So it's hard. If he's not able to manage his emotions, he may be looking to you to do that. But the interesting thing is, when you stop managing other people's emotions, they have a dilemma. They either have to begin to figure out how to do it for themselves, or the downside is that they begin to escalate and try harder to get you to manage their emotions for them. And that can be tricky. We are in this community all about safety planning and helping women do that, so that as they begin to grow and change, they can be safe and be on the watch for escalation and have a plan for if that happens. So Karen, you take a deep breath before speaking, and you possibly walk away. Yes, that can be a great skill to have. That breath is so important. Taking that pause to notice your own feelings, to notice your thoughts, and to begin to choose what kind of behavior is going to be best here. So walking away is sometimes that best behavior. Yeah, Beth, taking a walk outdoors. That's a great self-regulation tool. Beverly, scripture and praise music. Beautiful. Some great ideas for emotional regulation. So self-soothing could be something like a hot cup of tea, a warm bath, singing, meeting up with a friend. Those self-care activities that help you to feel rejuvenated, to invest in your physical, mental, spiritual, emotional health. Those are important, not just for emotional regulation, but just taking care of your body. Cuddling your kitty. Yes, Tracy. That could also help you regulate and soothe your nervous system. So that could be a great self-care tool. What else is coming up for you all? A bath with magnesium flakes. Okay. Yeah, that's a great one too. So the ideal is that you can have a strong sense of self, but also show up for each other in a partnership. You can care for each other. You can be reliable and consistent and do things for each other when it's reciprocal and there's mutuality in the relationship, but yet you're free to be yourselves. Yeah, Queen bee. When you know it's going bad, don't get pulled in. Absolutely. Yoga class. That's another great one for working on your nervous system, calming your emotions. And then one more thing I had on my list for creating partnership and self-care is embracing flexibility. And this can be tough, but finding that balance is important. So being willing to adjust. And I don't mean being flexible around issues of safety and trust, but in terms of what does somebody else need and want in the relationships, oftentimes there can be compromise and flexibility with those differences, as allowing each person to choose different things, to be outside of the relationship and have other interests, other friendships, so that when you come back together, there's that synergy that we were talking about, that incredible energy that happens when you can both be yourself and be powerful in relationship together. Box breathing, Karen, awesome. I love box breathing. That's a great way to regulate your emotions. So I see there's a question about what are the examples of needs versus wants in the relationship. I think when we're talking about needs, those are sort of what's been defined as basic human needs. Food, water, clothing, shelter, safety. Those are needs. So in a relationship, having trust is pretty foundational. Need for love and belonging is pretty important. But in terms of specifics of, maybe a want might be, I want us to have date night once a week. That wouldn't be a need. That would be a want. Wants are things that maybe are preferences that you have, but they're not foundational to the relationship or your safety and well-being. So I hope that answers it, but I would love to hear in the chat, what other kind of thoughts do you have around the issue of needs versus wants? So let's just kind of take a poll. What kind of needs do you have? What do you consider a need in an important relationship? So it could be things like trust and different aspects of trust are safety, reliability, sexual integrity, being cared for, having financial security, honesty. Those could be foundational needs in the relationship, sort of like your deal breakers. If I don't get these in relationship, it's not worth being in the relationship. Yeah, loyalty. Loyalty is tricky, so I would say really define what that means, because I think that's a word that often gets weaponized against people is you have to do what I want, or you have to kind of erase my sins against you if you're loyal. So define a little bit more, Kristen, what you mean by loyalty in a relationship, an important relationship. Connection with vulnerability. Yes. Which sometimes gets tricky also because not everybody is good at being vulnerable or fostering connection. And what if you're in a relationship to somebody who doesn't have as strong of a need for that as you do? And how do you coexist in relationship and in the same space when your need for something is different? So there are many people who are more factual, who don't get deep in terms of communication or emotional vulnerability because they were never modeled that. They don't know how to do it. And it can be a challenge and it can be really scary. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't encourage them to learn that, but also having empathy without enabling it can be tricky there. That's something that we work on in Walking in Core Strength and our group coaching is how do you communicate with empathy and yet not enable some behaviors that are either destructive or are not working. So Beth, a need is that when I say something stupid, he does not roll his eyes in judgment. He shows grace to me. Yeah, I would say, is that a need or a want? That really comes down to how important it feels for you. So for other people, they may be able to let that go as he has a reaction that may be judgment, but you don't have to take it as judgment. So his eye roll might mean, I don't agree. Certainly it's disrespectful. And is he aware that he's doing that? Is he not? Is it just kind of a knee-jerk reaction? Does he care that he does that? Those are all really important things to think about. Obviously, ideally in a relationship, we want to show grace to each other. Is that we want to be able to feel safe being vulnerable, that somebody doesn't make fun of us or judge, that they can be curious, they can laugh with us, they can help clarify. But I'm wondering, Beth, what does it mean to you when he rolls his eyes? What thought goes through your mind? What happens as a reaction of that? What emotions come up for you? I can guess at some of that, but it's very individualized. So Tracy, your needs safety, trust, and honesty. Okay. Being a priority. Laura, okay, I see that. And also I'm wondering that could mean a lot of different things, just like loyalty. What do you mean by being a priority? Is there room for him to have interests that are outside of you? Is it okay for him to put self-care before he puts you sometimes? So really defining those expectations can be difficult. So you could easily accuse somebody of not putting you as a priority if they want to sleep 8 hours a night. Does it mean they're not putting you as a priority if they don't stay up late playing games with you or listening to you? So what does that mean? Is there room for negotiation? Is it something that can be talked about with respect and negotiated? And is there freedom? Somebody having your back. Again, what does it mean to have your back? Maybe it's that no judgment. Does that mean supporting you no matter what? Does it mean enabling you to have bad behavior? So having your back could mean a lot of different things too. So truth is a need, authenticity. So you have a need for him to get his head out of his phone and the television and video games. So that's going to be a challenge. If you need that for your survival and he's not willing, what happens to you, Beverly? So, you know, does he have the freedom to live the life he wants with you still being okay? And what do you do? How do you get yourself to a place of being okay? So that's just some thoughts for you. I would love to hear your questions. I've got Jessica here with me, who's on the search for your questions in the chat, hopefully on Instagram as well, because I may be missing some of those. So Tracy, I see your comment. My husband says that sex and me having fun with him are the most important thing in marriage. So I don't know where he gets that. Those might be his most important things, but that's certainly not God's most important thing. And it may not be everybody's most important thing. So that may be worth a discussion. What are your most important things? Is he open to hearing that? And what if you say, hey, I can see that's important to you and we can do that sometimes, but is there room for my most important things as well? Okay, I'm seeing another comment. When I express my needs, I have been told that no one can give another all their needs, and I might need to look to God to meet those needs, or I am to die to myself and care about his needs. Yeah, so that sometimes gets used as a weapon. Die to yourself and only care about his needs. That's why we're here discussing this topic today, is because there's been some really bad teaching around this. What does it mean to die to yourself? I don't think that means enabling somebody else. And so this is part of what we talk about, empathy without enabling as one of the core principles. But just as we're here today, is he can't totally rely on you for all his needs, nor can you rely totally on him. Yes, there is a place for God. God can do a work that man cannot do for one another. This is why we're talking about what's a need and what's a want. And having a strong, independent life where you have many people who are speaking into your life, who are fulfilling relationship needs for you, where you have places to connect with others, you have wise others in your life to spend time with, so that you're not just anxiously looking for one person to do all that for you. So dying to yourself is sort of like the seed that has to be cracked open and stops being a seed in order to become an oak tree. So dying to yourself is becoming more of who God created you to be, not more of who another person needs for you to be in order for them to feel okay in their life. It's sort of like flourishing in life, becoming the best that you can be, not limiting the best of who you are, so that you can create something or enable something in somebody else. That's not what we're talking about when we talk about dying to yourself. It's about that ability to let go of your small self, your humanness, to really flourish the way God intended you to grow, and to become strong, and to carry out God's purpose. So I hope that helps a little bit to break that down for you. I don't know that he's going to agree with that or how you want to have that conversation with him, but I think it's really important how you have that conversation with yourself, knowing what that means for you. So just checking in the chat for more questions. How do I tell my husband my expectations for a separation? He also wants to separate, but my husband is a rager and I never know when he will explode. Okay, so this is where we go back to safety planning. So if he has a pattern of exploding, plan for that. Have that prepared. So does that mean that you need a third party there? Does it mean you need to be in public when you have this conversation? Do you need to have somebody strong in the wings that you can call in if you need them. When you have the conversation, making sure you have a clear exit, making sure you have a place to go. Make sure that you have your own vehicle and access to that if you need to leave. So that ability to leave the conversation is super important. And noticing those signs. So when he begins to rage, how do you not escalate the conversation more? So recognizing it and slowing things down and beginning to de-escalate the conversation rather than continuing to play into it. So that may be stopping talking. It might be taking a breath and saying, hey, let's pause this conversation. And then making sure that you have access to your escape route or some extra support if you need that. And I would also say, how do you tell your husband your expectations? I would say, pray, prepare, plan, practice that conversation so that you know what you want to say in a way that has the best chance for him not to escalate, that you practice that so that it does sound kind and respectful, that it doesn't contain criticisms or blames, that it's focused on you and your needs, what you will do, what you won't do. So really defining those boundaries. So this is something that we work on in group coaching as well. So hopefully, Beth, you have gone to leslievernick.com/group coaching to check out that link, to see when class times are offered, to see if that might be something that could help you in this process of separation. Separation could be really useful in relationships to put a pause on old patterns, to give each other a chance to work on becoming strong individually. So if that's the place you're at, you need to build core strength. You need to get strong in who you are to find a place of better self-care before rejoining in the relationship. Perhaps walking in core strength would be right for you. The best way to know your own values. Great question. This is something I do a lot with my clients. And honestly, the easiest way to do that is to kind of Google values. There's something called a values card sort that I use quite often, but just getting that list of what are all the possibilities of values and allowing yourself to self-reflect. What's important to me? You may pull out quite a lot of things that are important, then sort of just organizing them based on who you are, what feels most important to you in this season of life. It's a great tool. It's a great way to learn how you make decisions and give you a different focus for making difficult decisions in your life. So we have a question. How can we stop the resentment? So sometimes that can be really challenging, but I think the first step of that is to reflect, where is the resentment coming from? So our emotions are comfortable or uncomfortable, but I would not say that they're good or bad. So resentment is a feeling you're having for a reason. And most oftentimes resentment comes up because of lack of boundaries. So we can have boundaries in a lot of different areas of life. We can have emotional boundaries. We can have physical boundaries. We can have sexual boundaries, boundaries in terms of responsibility. So thinking about where is that coming from? What's happening that's crossing your internal limits that doesn't feel good? So once you kind of learn what the resentment is trying to tell you, then you can take steps toward protecting that And that's where you would build a boundary and figure out how to communicate that in a way that doesn't say, I have a boundary, right? So if you come across to somebody and tell them that you have a boundary, I can almost guarantee that's not going to go well. The use of the word boundary is not going to be very helpful. And so how you communicate that is going to be important. And coming from a place of personal desires, personal needs is going to go a lot better. So really owning it as a need or a want that you have and asking the other person to participate in that with you is kind of a first start to that. But I would really look into, what is the resentment telling you? What limit is being crossed? And then what do you need in order to protect that? So there may be some things that you can do to help yourself with resentment. And that's what we'd be looking at first. So the next question, what does it mean if you're tired of trying to communicate wants and needs? It may not even matter, even if they wanted to care or change. Your being healthy may depend not on not being with them. That may be true. Yeah, so if you've gone round and around in a relationship and the person is still destructive to you, you may decide that you can't live in that environment. So I often think about it like, being in a room where there's a carbon monoxide leak, and then your desire is to be able to stay healthy and well in that space. You may not be able to. Can you fix the carbon monoxide leak? Perhaps. But if the answer is no, you're just going to be continually sick in this place. And then what do you need in order to get space? So that's a really hard decision, and a decision that only you can make if you decide to leave the relationship out of well-being. You need to be well, and you can't be well with somebody who is toxic. Nobody can make that decision for you. But if you're tired of communicating, I would look at, why are you tired of it? How has it been going? What is the pattern? Have you been communicating in a healthy, respectful way? I don't know your communication skills level. I don't know what you've done in order to be strong within yourself, to learn about yourself, learn about ways to communicate. So that may be something that you look at. If that's ringing true for you, is that you're more reactive in communication, you're more apt to shout needs at somebody or blame them for not meeting your needs. Perhaps you want to look at walking in core strength to strengthen yourself and get some new perspective or new skills in place for communication that could make a difference. But if you've already done that, and you know that you're being respectful, if you are empathetic without enabling, and you've had a long-standing pattern of that, you may decide this is not the right relationship for you. All right. So what are your other questions? What questions do you have about this coaching opportunity? We've got just a couple minutes left. I do need to end this before 1 o'clock. So I want to give you a chance to ask all your questions now. We will be going live again this week. Leslie will be here on Wednesday at noon. And the topic she will be discussing is it possible to thrive in a troubled relationship? Yes. Learn how. So many of you may want to join Leanne as she talks about that on Wednesday. So go ahead and put in the chat, what have you gotten out of this live? Maybe where has God met you? What has he given you in this space, maybe just to see the amount of people who've shown up today and who've asked questions. Perhaps you have realized that you're not alone in this. So I see another question while you're doing that, populating the chat. What do you do about intimidation when you're trying to do healthy boundaries and self-care? Well, I would be concerned about intimidation. What do you mean by intimidation? So I talked about the importance of safety planning. If you're feeling like this person is aggressive, manipulative, coercive, and controlling, I would definitely have a safety plan for that. And to just notice it, to be clear in yourself what's happening, and to get some additional support when you talk about boundaries, perhaps. And, oftentimes narrating what you see. So I'll just offer this. I don't know, Tracy, what you're experiencing in terms of intimidation. If you're talking about a romantic partner, a man perhaps is what I'm going to guess here in this situation, is that men can be intimidating to women quite easily without them recognizing it. I don't know if it's intentional or not. It may well be intentional. And so you know the relationship, you know the person better. But in order to decipher that, you could offer some what I'll call narration of what you're seeing. So you might just say, when you said that to me, your jaw really clenched up. You looked angry, or, you're coming at me and your fists are clenched. And that doesn't help me to feel safe with you. Do you notice that? So kind of noticing out loud what intimidation looks like to you. Is he coming at you? Is he getting too close? Is he trying to block your entrance or your exit? So in a very confident way, kind of noticing out loud what you're experiencing. And then also safety planning is really important. If somebody tends to be intimidating when you are with them or having conversations, is always in the back of your mind, have an exit plan for yourself. Know how to keep yourself safe. Have your phone on you at all times if you need to call 911. I hope that's helpful. It's hard for me to answer that when I don't know you or your situation well, and I do want to be careful with that. I thought I saw another question in the chat before we end. Yeah, Beverly, no matter what you say, he turns around, blames you, gaslights, and demeans. It's really hard to be in that relationship and have any sense of partnership. And so it may be hard to balance that. You can't create partnership on your own. And so if you're finding the other person is not interested in partnership, then I would say you have to focus on that self-care piece. You can't do partnership alone. You can invite the other person, but you can't force them into partnership with you. All right. Thank you all for being here. It's been good to be with you today. I hope you're able to join. I know there are some spots open. We start Walking in Core Strength group coaching next week, and I would love to see you all there. Check that out at leslievernick.com/group coaching. And remember to take a breath and be well. Thanks for being here. Bye, everybody.